Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the upset alerts all around the country, and we got six of them. There's plenty more, and we're going to talk about a couple of them right here. We got a little bit of a whip around for you, a number of games that we just haven't quite gotten a chance to touch on that we got to do it right. Excuse me for that, apologies there. But let's go ahead and jump into this, and let's start. Clemson goes on the road to number 20 Louisville. Louisville favored by 2.5 in this game, over under at 49.5. It's a Friday nighter. Friday night at 7:30, going to be really, really fun. This line feels weird, right? Like Clemson's been a terrible season, a season from hell in a lot of ways for the Clemson Tigers, and now they got a Louisville team that, yes, did just come off a loss to Cal, a tough loss, but maybe they're more focused. Maybe they're locked in. They're a really tough team. I don't know. This one's giving me a couple of vibes that are very, very interesting. Absolutely a game that would totally shake up what the ACC looks like. Louisville could lose this one, be totally out of the ACC, and then they get a chance, I believe, at Virginia next week, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be really, really interesting. Or SMU. SMU is who they get next week, and then they could blow their season up. So this could get really interesting. It's going to be a fight. I think it's going to be an absolute battle. Clemson coming in with some confidence. Trey Moore playing really, really good football for them right now. I believe they're in a really good position. Louisville without Isaac Brown is a really interesting piece in this, where if Clemson can stop the run, that's probably the guy that could kind of defy that in some ways, defy some of the athletes that Clemson has. I'm not sure they have another guy that can do it to that level, I should say. So I think it's going to be a really, really incredible fight. I'll lean towards Louisville in this one, but I think Clemson's very, very live to win this football game. I think they got a little bit of confidence brewing in. If they can get the ball to all the playmakers they have on the out, TJ Moore, not Trey Moore, apologies for that. TJ Moore is playing really good football. If they can get it to guys like him and let them make plays, I think this one could be a whole lot more interesting than maybe some people think. Minnesota at number 8, Oregon. Oregon coming off that very, very weird win over Iowa in the rain, and they stare down a finish of Minnesota, USC, and Washington. None of those are layups. I can promise you that. This Minnesota team is very, very tough, but you are in the middle of these two games against Iowa and USC, two ranked matchups. Not to say Minnesota should be overlooked, but it's not crazy to think you might overlook this Golden Gophers team, but this is a very fun team. Drake Lindsey is very dangerous. Darius Taylor, one of the best running backs in the entire country, period. Very, very fun team up there for PJ Fleck, and they've given quite a few teams some scares this year, so they absolutely could shock this team. It's a pretty typical trap game for Oregon in the classical term. If you're going to get lost in one game, I think this might be the one that you do it. I like Oregon's size and physicality to win out overall in this one. I think Dante Moore is gaining a little bit of confidence after that win last week. I think they end up winning this one, but Minnesota might be a little bit more live here than especially than 25.5 favored for Oregon would have you think. Number 24, South Florida at Navy, a huge one in the American, and there's another one we'll talk about here in a minute, but there's obviously a number of more weeks to go. There's still some things that could happen. I'd be willing to bet the winner of this game is going to be in the American title game in a month. I feel fairly confident saying that, and it's going to be a really interesting fight. Two very, very run-first teams, two teams that attack the run game in kind of different ways. Navy a little bit more, obviously, you get downhill with that fullback, or you pitch the ball all the way to the outside. USF kind of somewhere in the middle of that. They were a little bit of a wide zone football team with that quarterback run being a big piece of that. That's kind of what I want to zero in on here. Byron Brown and Ethan Horvath are about as good as you're going to find in Blake Horvath are about as good of quarterbacks as you're going to find at the group of 5 level. They are going to make remarkable plays in this one. I promise you that. It is going to be well worth your time to tune into this one. Going to be very, very fun because Navy is one of those offenses that methodical. We're going to run the ball, and then they hit a 60-yard explosive when you did not expect it. Eli Heidenreich is a very, very dangerous player when he gets the ball in his hands, and I think it's going to be a really fun one. Overall, I trust South Florida's defense just that touch more than Navy's right now. I think it's going to be a really fun one. I think we could have a shootout on our hands. I also think this one could kind of get bogged down just a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a great one. I think South Florida does enough to win this one and keep their CFP hopes firmly alive. Number 19, Virginia at Duke. Duke favored by 5.5 in this one, over under at 57.5. It's a 3:30 kick over there in Durham, and weird one, but a massive one in the ACC. Duke is still alive for the ACC championship at 5-4. They have the ability to run the table the rest of the way, get into the ACC title, win it, and then we'll see what happens from there. But they got to get through Virginia first. Virginia coming off a tough loss last weekend to Wake Forest, where they lose Chandler Morris in that game. It sounds like they're hopeful he's going to be okay. We'll see what happens the rest of the week. Concussion protocol is a very, very fickle thing that you can be back in 1 week. It could take you multiple weeks. I tend to believe he will be out there on Saturday, but something to watch as we get a little bit closer. They're going to need him. I can promise you that. They need Chandler Morris to be on that football field because Dario Mensah is going to make plays in this game. He is too talented of a thrower of the football to not make a couple of big-time plays. He is going to do that. I think it's going to be a really, really fun game. I don't really have the same desire to see Duke blow this thing up the way that some other people do. Not to say it wouldn't be entertaining, not to say it would be it's anything against Duke, if I'm being totally honest. It's just one of those things that I think would be so ridiculous to watch an 8-4 team find their way into the CFP. But who knows? Maybe it could happen. Frankly, I think they're going to tease us just a little bit longer with it. I think Duke wins this game. I think it's going to be a weird one to watch. I think it's going to be back and forth, up and down, but I think Dario Mensah and Duke win this one, and the idea gets a little bit more clear that maybe the ACC is not in a great spot for the CFP moving forward unless they somehow get an at-large from Miami. Again, we'll talk about it all on Friday. It gets very confusing every time we talk about it. Memphis at East Carolina, another huge one in the American, another one that could very well decide who plays in that conference championship game. Now, Tulane will have plenty to say about that, and we'll talk about the rest of the G5 games here in a second, but at the end of the day, really, really fun one. Memphis coming off a loss last week, didn't play all that strong of football throughout that football game. Kind of got blown out and were able to make it look a little bit better at the end there, but they're coming off a loss last week, and they go into a really, really tough team. Blake Harrell has done a great job since he's taken over that team. Caden Hauser is playing really high-level quarterback for them, and they're a really tough team. They play really good defense. They run the ball well, and then Caden Hauser makes very few mistakes. It's a very, very well-run team, and they're favored in this one. 2.5 points when you're at home makes sense to me. I think it shows that they're probably about even on a neutral field, maybe Memphis slightly favored, but Memphis is a great team. I think they're really, really solid. I think ECU is really good against the run. I think the Memphis pass offense is going to struggle, or pass defense, is going to struggle against Caden Hauser. I think ECU gets this win. I think they knock Memphis out of the race 2 weeks after they were in the CFP. I think they're going to be fully out of the race for the American. And then Florida at number 7, Ole Miss. I just wanted to talk about the storyline. Ole Miss favored by 15.5 here. I don't know who's starting at quarterback for Florida, whether it's DJ Lagway or Trammell Jones Jr. Both of them are talented kids. It would be interesting to see what Trammell Jones had. I don't know how much it matters. I'll be totally honest with you. There's tons of moments where this Florida team could have quit and they didn't in the past 2 years, really. I think they might have quit last week. And that's not trying to be disrespectful in any way. That's just, I don't think Kentucky beats any team by 31 unless that team is not all the way there mentally. So that's going to be a weird thing to watch. I think Ole Miss wins this game. I think they kind of roll in this game. I think Trinidad Chambliss has a great day. The talk around Lane Kiffin is going to be very interesting because that Florida job is still sitting there. They are going to make that guy tell them no before they move on. I promise you that. It'll be interesting to watch this one unfold, especially in the build-up. I think Ole Miss is going to take care of business in this one. But frankly, if DJ Lagway gets out there and just has one of those afternoons, who knows? Absolutely a team that could make a big-time splash. We saw him do it earlier this year against Texas. Could very well happen to Ole Miss here, and we'll see what happens if it does. But at the end of the day, that's more about Lane Kiffin in Florida, and we'll see what happens with that down the road. And then the rest of the group of 6 games, let's just get to these real quickly. App State JMU should be a game that JMU just kind of goes about their business, but those rivalry games can get a little bit weird. So that's one to watch pretty closely. Texas State against Southern Miss. Southern Miss playing really good football under Charles Huff. A lot of respect to him. Does a great job down there, and Marshall probably feeling not great about that decision. But at the end of the day, they face off against G.J. Kinney and Texas State, a really fun one down there. In the Sun Belt, yes, apologies, but yes, in the Sun Belt. FAU at Tulane. Tulane, again, should be able to handle this one pretty comfortably and continue moving forward in the American. Utah State, UNLV. UNLV still alive in the Mountain West, and then Boise State at San Diego State, the other massive one over there in the Mountain West that still technically in the mix for the CFP. I'd be surprised if the Mountain West champion was the representative. And then Kennesaw State playing great football. A really, really great job by Jerry Mack taking over in his first year. They're favored over Jacksonville State. That's a very interesting team as well. So we got a lot of fun ones, a lot of ones that are going around that are going to be really interesting. And at the end of the day, I think you're looking at the American or JMU for your CFP representative. But at the end of the day, with how the ACC is looking, everything's on the table for these teams moving forward. And before we get out of here, we got to talk about the Battle of the Ravine. Henderson State plays Ouachita Baptist. This is a weird game. It's not a game that's overly important. Both these teams are 7-3. They're D2 football teams. A lot of people won't talk about this game, and frankly, it just tickled my fancy. I really liked it. The Battle of the Ravine, if you need to know anything about it, both these schools are in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. These schools are literally across the street from each other, and that's not being hyperbolic. That's not me joking. That's not me being too aggressive. They're across the street from each other, so much so that the away team, which will be Henderson State in this one, they're going to be in their own locker room in pregame, and then they're just going to walk over to the field and play a football game. They're not going to take a bus. They're not going to do any of that. They're just going to walk from their locker room to the other team's field, and they're going to face off. It's the 98th time that these teams have met. They met the first time in 1895. Andrew Edwards, dual threat quarterback for Henderson State, very talented kid. Trey Nichols leading the way for Ouachita Baptist. You got Chris Henley Jr., you got Jordan Walker as his running mates. It's just college football. It's the perfect encapsulation of what college football is about, because all of those kids I know are so amped up for this game. They're going to be so excited walking over after they get their cleats on. They're going to be walking across a street probably to get on the other field. It's just great. It would have been awesome to have College Game Day there. Frankly, I think they should be there. It's just such a perfect encapsulation of what college football is. It's on at Saturday at 2 p.m. So if you'd like to tune in, please do. It's going to be a very, very fun one, and a game that should get a little bit of love. In a world of college football that is meant to be weird, that is meant to be specific, that is meant not to be for everyone, why not give Henderson State, Ouachita Baptist, a little bit of love on Saturday, because it's a great encapsulation of what college football is all about. But that's just one I wanted to throw in there. Felt like I had to give some love to the D2 ranks before we got out of here. But an incredible week of college football. A week of college football that will tell us a lot about what's going to go on in the CFP. But I'll take my whack on Friday. I'll try to figure out what's going to happen in all of these chaos scenarios around every conference. I'll do my best to break it down on Friday. I promise you that it's not going to be easy, but I'll do my best to break it down on Friday. We'll give my best bets on Friday, maybe some final thoughts, maybe some reactions from games that happened until Friday, We'll see how all of that develops, but a lot of stuff coming on Friday. We'll get into just the chaos scenarios that could totally change what this sport is about. But we'll talk about it all as it goes on, but thank you so much for tuning in to just another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. Please do like, subscribe, comment. It means the absolute world to me. It helps me out a ton. Something I want to build around here, really special thing for people that love college football. That's what it's all about. So please do like, subscribe, comment. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on Friday to break down chaos is probably the best way to put it.